Back to the YouTube.
And there you're live. You have OBS on your stream. I'm with you now.
All right. Well, let me put it up
I'll get
on.
off your stream.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
No problem. And there you're live. You have OBS on your stream. I'm with you now.
Shout out to Canty for saving me here. Guys, just give me a second to set it up. This is my first one. Okay, we want to do that. Hi, can you guys see me? Everything good? Can you hear me good? Oh, you're not going to see me. You're going to see my wonderful YouTube video I have up. Can you guys hear me good? Sounds good? Good, good? Okay, I saw a heart. I saw 100. Okay, so here's what I really wanted to get at. Let's see if I can. We'll go like this. We'll go like this. All right, let's do a quick entrance because this is like the best thing ever. All right, so hey. All right, I had to do it, right? I told myself if I ever had a live stream, the first thing I ever did was play that for my entrance because it's just flat out beautiful. So, anyways, let's get down to business, yeah? Okay. I got a video sent to me. We're going to go in the world of conspiracy theory. And we're going to do this because it's coming true in real life. So I don't have proof on what I'm about to show you. I don't. I got this from one of my Ukrainian buddies in the city. He sent it to me. I haven't validated it. I haven't verified it. I don't know. Right? But everything that is said in here is exactly the characteristics of Donald Trump and what he is doing. So I want to kind of go through this and react. It's 50 minutes long. Right? Okay? Stick with me. About 20 minutes in, I got a little sleepy. But because there's so much information, there's a lot, right? And come on, how many of us are from Russia and have been to Soviet Russia, right? So it's going to be a learning experience for all of us. The thing that strikes me as very, very strange is how accurate this is to what is unfolding now. And stuff I didn't know about Donald Trump's history, about his ex-wife and stuff like that. So I'm gonna play it right now. We'll go into it and let me know what you guys think. Let's do this.
In light of the latest geopolitical events taking place in the world and what may happen in the very near future, in connection with the rise to power in the United States of Donald Trump, I have decided to bring to the attention of all interested parties the secret information that I have from the direct participants and executors of this top-secret operation of the KGB of the USSR to recruit and subsequently cooperate with US citizen Donald John Trump. The leaders and high-ranking officers of the KGB of the USSR, as well as the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia, Statny Bezpanost, were involved in this operation. I do not exclude the possibility of participation and supervision by state bodies of the USSR and the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. The head of the KGB of the USSR, Yuri Andropov, and his first deputy Semyon Tsvigan were the direct leaders of this secret operation. Army General Tsvigan also supervised the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th Directorates of the KGB of the USSR and the main directorate of the border troops of the KGB of the USSR.
So, guys, I'm getting to this. Like, all of this right here is probably verifiable, but they're gonna put a narrative in here that kind of makes you wonder. It's kind of like a trust me, bro, because the guy who's talking or the AI that's behind it, whoever typed this up, whoever made this, is saying that he has connections, and there's really no way to validate that. So keep that in mind.
The leadership and staff of the 2nd Directorate of Counterintelligence of the KGB of the USSR directly carried out contact recruitment of Donald John Trump during his first trip to the USSR in 1987. But this recruitment operation, according to the data I have verified, began back in the mid-70s with the direct participation of the leadership of the 1st Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR, Intelligence, and the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia.
So, like I said before, there's going to be stuff in here that's verifiable that we can absolutely make a determination on, right? Then there's going to be a part where the guy says, hey, I'm former KGB, my dad was in it, I have ties, so it's kind of a trust me, bro. But at the same time, a lot of this is coming to fruition now. So it makes you wonder, right? Like I said, a pretty reliable source that sent it to me. He is a Ukrainian guy that lives in the city. Well, let's see.
In order for interested parties to understand the extent of my access to classified information and sources, and to trust my information, I would like to slightly lift the curtain on my identity. I am a former Lieutenant Colonel of the 5th Directorate of the GRU of the USSR, the Directorate of Operational Intelligence. Due to close family ties and complete trust, from February 5, 1982 to July 13, 1987, I was the closest assistant to the Chief of the Main Intelligence Directorate, Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the USSR, Army General Pyotr Ivashutin, and due to the nature of my service, I had access to the most secret information of all intelligence and special services of the USSR, as well as the security services of the Warsaw Pact countries. I had to directly communicate with the leadership of the intelligence services of these countries and, on Ivashutin's instructions, delve into and supervise joint operations.
Okay, so let's pause here. So what do we have that we can validate this on? Due to close family ties and complete trust from February 5th, 1982 to July 13th, 1987, I was the closest assistant to the head of the Main Intelligence Director, Deputy Chief of the General of the Armed Forces of the USSR. What else? I am a former Lieutenant Colonel of the 5th Directorate of the GRU. So I think maybe we can take this information and verify that. I don't know. I kind of just want to. I'm just gonna do it because you guys we're learning this together. We're gonna research this together. I'm gonna snip that because I feel like that's important and it's gonna go away for later. All right, let's keep going.
At that time, not a single, even the most insignificant operation carried out on the territory of Eastern European countries or on the territory of the rest of the world was possible without the participation of Soviet specialists. All operations involving the special services of these socialist countries were carried out only after coordination with Moscow. The ears and the watchful eye of the big brother of the occupier were sticking out everywhere. And I very often had to be precisely these ears and eyes of Pyotr Ivashutin. I will start with information I received quite recently from a former high-ranking officer of the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia. After the collapse of the USSR and the socialist camp, and after the declaration of independence of the Czech Republic and Slovakia, he became a general of the Office of Foreign Relations and Information, i.e. the Foreign Intelligence of the Czech Republic. Starting his service in Státní bezpečnost, he was directly subordinate to Colonel G. Kudelka, who in the late 60s recruited and subsequently supervised Ivana Marie Zelnkov, the future first wife of Donald John Trump. She was recruited in the highest category in the qualification of secret agent. Such people were recruited for conscious cooperation. Reasons: material benefits, coupons in department stores, financing of expenses, clothing, Western alcohol, etc. Better employment options with opportunities to travel around the world. And also...
Wait a second. If you guys want a Russian spy, all you gotta do is give them coupons, maybe an egg rebate, vodka, and some clothes. And you got your own spy. Continue.
Also, ideological reasons, the fight for socialism, the peace movement, etc. An important addition was communication with representatives of the unfriendly West. It resulted in psychological pressure on the subjects through compromising information, demoralization of the individual, blackmail, etc. Státní bezpečnost used undercover agents in all its departments: intelligence, counterintelligence, security, surveillance, and the intelligence technical department. In intelligence, there were such categories of undercover agents as agent, secret liaison, and ideological collaborator. Cooperation was most often terminated due to the health or death of the employee, his emigration, demotion, etc., but everything depended on the quality of the cooperation. Ivana Marie Zelnkov was born on February 20, 1949, in the city of Gottwald in Moravia. From her youth, she devoted her attention to alpine skiing. According to Ivana herself, she was even a member of the reserve team of Czechoslovakia at the 1972 Winter Olympics. But if this pre-prepared legend worked until the mid-80s, then already in 1989, by the time of the collapse of the Warsaw Pact and its secret intelligence services, the Secretary General of the Olympic Committee of Czechoslovakia Petr Pomezny began to refute this legend. When journalists asked about Ivana Zelnkov, he replied, "Who is this woman Ivana, and why do journalists continue to ask about her? We have searched and consulted with many people."
All right, quick question in the chat. How many people knew Ivana Zelnkov at all? How many people knew that Trump had a wife that was from the Eastern European USSR region before his current? Because I'm going to be truthful, I had no clue. So I got confused watching this. I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. And then I'm like, holy shit. How many people didn't know that?
Many times, and there is no such girl in our records. It is this remark that makes us look into her biography in more detail. We see a standard scheme used by the special services of the USSR and the Warsaw Pact countries to transfer and legalize their female agents to the countries of the hostile West. This is a fictitious marriage with a foreigner who fell into the networks of these special services due to some offense. From my experience of service in the GRU of the USSR, I claim that we had quite extensive lists of such potential clients for subsequent recruitment in order to later use them in our interests. Zelnkov's example is very typical of the classic pattern of this kind of operation. In 1971, Zelnkov married Austrian ski instructor Alfred Wilkelmeyer. In March 1972,
I think
Ivana
I was
Wilkelmeyer
born in
received Austrian
1983. I don't
citizenship.
remember any of
The
this.
fact that this was a fictitious marriage is evidenced by the fact that from the moment of the wedding and while living with Alfred, Ivana Wilkelmeyer had a romantic relationship with the Czechoslovak lyricist and playwright Yuri Tidal, who was also an employee of the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia. He helped Ivana quickly adapt to her new role. Tidal died in a car accident in 1973, and most likely not by accident. At least,
Wait a second. Mysterious car accident. Jeez. Okay.
according to my Czech informant, the police closed this case very quickly. After Stiedel's death in 1973, Ivana and her fictitious husband left for the United States, where they got divorced in Los Angeles. After the divorce, Ivana moved to Canada, where she lived with another employee of the Czechoslovak State Security Service, George Yuri Sirovatka, who was acting undercover. According to the legend, he was the owner of a ski boutique in Montreal. Ivana had known this employee since his studies and service in Czechoslovakia since 1967.
Didn't
While
J.D.
living in
Vance
Canada,
just go
Ivana worked
skiing
as a ski
too?
instructor and worked part-time as a model in a department store and a designer clothing store. She was also involved in the advertising campaign for the 1976 Summer Olympics. There was a strong hand behind her, skillfully leading her to the main goal of her entire life and service. With a beautiful biography and an impressive portfolio. In 1976, Ivana was introduced to Donald John Trump by the KGB residency in the USA. She immediately broke up with Yuri Sirovatka and threw herself into Trump's arms. That was when the operation to recruit and use Donald Trump in the KGB operations began. And it was Ivana Zelnkov who prepared Trump and brought him to Moscow in 1987 to ensure personal contact between her husband and the then chairman of the KGB.
All right, this is kind of a lot so far, right? So we just switched from former ties, former relationships to all of a sudden, boom, here we are. Trump with a KGB agent who likes clothing, coupons, and alcohol. Does any part of this not sound at least the slightest bit possible?
According to my information, this meeting took place in one of the KGB buildings in Kaiselny Lane. Ivana Zelnkov, in addition to her native Czech, was fluent in several languages, Russian, German, and French. She herself did not indicate English among these languages, although she lived in the USA with Trump from 1976 to 1992. In her marriage with Donald Trump, she had 3 children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump. How did she communicate with her husband and children without knowing English? The fact that she did not indicate fluency in English could be a kind of psychological defense. And this is one of the skills that are taught in the secret services. The moment when Donald Trump's family relationship with Ivana Trump Zelnkov began to break up miraculously.
Typical Steve saying, typical to USSR tied to US insertions. Yes, but like we've already heard the fact that it might have been the DOJ came out with a report saying that there's Russians influencing Republicans and other politicians in everyday life, but they've never like really truly released like a list of who they are, who's been influenced. They just said that they're for sure there's influence. So my question is, where's that list? Why haven't they released it? And who's on it?
Coincided with the time of the destruction of the socialist system, the Warsaw Pact, and the secret services of the former socialist bloc countries in 1989. By the way, their official divorce took place in the same month, March 1992, when the KGB of the USSR and the GRU of the USSR ceased to exist. This was a clear attempt by Donald Trump to get rid of the documentary connection with the agent of the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia and the trail of its Moscow leadership. But the KGB of the USSR turned out to have two long tentacles. In conclusion of the research into Ivana Zelnkov's personality, I would like to inform you that in 2022, by decree of the President of the Czech Republic, she was posthumously awarded the Gold Medal for merit on the recommendation of the leadership of the Czech Security Service. This award is given by the President of the Czech Republic to citizens for merits in public service or local government, for achievements in the field of economics, science, technology, culture, art, sports, education, defense and national security of the state. But how the recruitment operation itself took place and what could have been discussed at the meeting between the chairman of the KGB of the USSR, Comrade Chebrikov, and Mr. Trump, I will tell you in my next message. Before approving the scheme for recruiting Donald Trump, experts compiled his psychological profile. This is the rule: the psychological features of the subject are identified, and a determination is made, are there prerequisites and grounds for his recruitment. But let's first delve into the history of the creation and construction of the Bolshevik punitive intelligence and counterintelligence system itself. I often come across various scientific works by Western researchers who call themselves specialists in the history of the USSR and experts in the work of the Soviet special services, starting from the moment of the October Revolution and until the collapse of the USSR in 1991. But all these specialists are historians or journalists at best by their education, that is, people far from the special services, from their ideology and the way of thinking of the employees of the Soviet, and now Russian special services. This mentality is formed during study in special institutions and subsequent service, and does not coincide with the generally accepted principles of morality in the West. A normal and mentally healthy person simply will not understand this. Having lived in Europe for over 10 years and periodically communicating with employees of European special services, I came to the conclusion that foreign citizens do not understand and are initially incapable of perceiving the ideological basis embedded in the consciousness of employees of the Soviet special services. It is precisely this.
Okay, that part is a lot to absorb. Okay, I'll turn the video up a little bit. Let's see, right there. So that's a lot to absorb. What he's just saying is like the normal person isn't going to really understand what's going on. And like the rate of the information that's pouring in on this is a lot, right? So let's take it in spoonfuls right now, like baby food. But 10% of this is true. It's still like disastrous to our nation. All right, let me know if the sounds better.
Misunderstanding and work according to their European moral and ethical templates that does not allow them to effectively counter the active measures of the Soviet, and now Russian, special services. I didn't just go through all the stages of training in the field of counterintelligence and intelligence of the USSR. I graduated from the higher school of the KGB and served for almost 2 years in the first main directorate, PGU KGB USSR, then for more than 10 years was close to the leadership of the GRU USSR, directly participating in the creation and construction of ideological principles and templates of the work of the system itself. Unlike most of my colleagues, who did not have high-ranking fathers with big shoulder straps, I was inside this think tank from childhood and witnessed the discussion of service problems and situations by grown-up uncles in shoulder straps in an informal setting during family get-togethers at the dacha. I saw tipsy marshals and generals, heard them and learned the nature of the system itself from the drunken revelations of military leaders. Such feasts were frequent and took place at generals' dachas in the near Moscow region. Of course, by the
Salt of the Red Earth, I can't believe we have 46 and a half more months of Trump. It sucks. You better get ready, because we got to make this through, make it through this together. It's fatiguing already, right? What's the date today? March 5th. March 5th. Of the first year. Yes, fatiguing for sure. How's the sound, guys? Does it sound better now?
By the time I entered and began studying at the KGB higher school, I was several heads above all my classmates and future colleagues in understanding how the system works. Later, already a major in the USSR GRU, for future career growth, I externally graduated from the Military Diplomatic Academy at the insistence of the head of the GRU, Pyotr Ivashutin. And since then, I have had quite extensive connections. After all, some of my classmates from the day before yesterday now work in the central office at the FSB of Russia and in the main directorate of the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense. 2 days ago, from one of my former classmates, a general in the central office of the FSB, I received more detailed and precise information about the operation to recruit the future US President Donald John Trump by the KGB of the USSR. according to information from my former classmate, who, due to the nature of his service, has access to the most secret archives of the FSB, SVR, and old KGB documents. Active measures with Donald Trump began in 1978. On October 17, 1978, the first deputy chief of the first main directorate of the KGB of the USSR, Lieutenant General Boris Ivanov, reported at a meeting of the heads of the first main directorate and, in particular, the chief of the first main directorate of the KGB of the USSR.
We're in March 6th. I live in California, okay? It's still the 5th. For crying out loud. Alright, I'm going to keep going. That was funny, though.
Vladimir Kryachkov on the completion of the first preliminary stage of recruiting Donald Trump, and proposed moving on to real cooperation and using him in active measures in the United States and other Western countries. Ivanov Boris Semenovich supervised Directorate K, Counterintelligence, and departments for the Western Hemisphere. In 1955 to 1959, he headed the legal KGB residency in New York. In 1960 to 1962, he was the head of the first department of the first main directorate of the KGB. From January 1962 to June 1964, he was a legal KGB resident in the United States, in New York, and went on business trips to Chile, Peru, Argentina, and Cuba. During his missions in the United States, he held the post of advisor to the permanent representative of the USSR to the UN, was an individual member of the Commission on Human Rights and the Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and Protection of Minorities of the UN. From March 17, 1979, he became the head of the KGB operational group in Afghanistan. From 1982 to 1987, he was the chief intelligence consultant of the group of consultants to the chairman of the KGB. Now we can assume with 100% certainty that it was Boris Ivanov who directly reported to Andropov and later to Chebrikov about cooperation with Donald Trump. It should be noted that it was Ivanov who in the 1980s was the representative of the KGB of the USSR in the Small Five of the Politburo, an expert foreign policy body that determined the foreign policy of the USSR. He was also the official representative of the USSR in international negotiations on security and cooperation in Europe and the limitation of strategic nuclear weapons. By the way,
okay, so we're at like 1980 right now, right? And we've got some evidence already. Alleged evidence that we have to validate. I can't do it all. I'm not going to be able to validate all this. Hopefully some of you can take this video and help me validate some of it. But we're at 1980. I was -3, right? So I don't know much about this history right now. They didn't teach it in school, in public school here. We learned some stuff, but usually I knew more than the teacher did. So, learning lesson for everybody. Next, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I got 2 likes on the stream, guys. Could you smack it? Please. All right, let's go.
During the invasion of the USSR troops into Czechoslovakia in 1968, Ivanov was the deputy head of the KGB operational group in Czechoslovakia and practically supervised and directed the joint actions of the USSR KGB and the local Statny Bezpenost service. From that moment on, it was Ivanov who supervised and maintained friendly, trusting ties with the STB leadership. And remembering the primary role of the Czechoslovak special services in this operation, we can easily identify the figure who played the main role in the recruitment of Donald Trump. I have listed Ivanov's positions in such detail to show what great importance the leadership of the USSR KGB and the country's leadership attached to the recruitment of Donald Trump even before the collapse of the USSR. Perhaps the collapse of the USSR was a psychological blow for Trump himself, which ideologically and mentally brings him closer to Putin. After Lieutenant General Ivanov was transferred to a higher management level in 1978, Major General Yuri Ivanovich Drozdov, Deputy Chief of the First Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR, Chief of Directorate S of Illegal Intelligence of the First Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR, who held this position from 1979 to 1991, took on the figure of Donald Trump in the system of the First Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR. At the same time, at the end of 1979, the Top Secret Service A, Active Measures, was connected to this operation. The employees of this secret service carried out open or secret specific operations, E-measures, the purpose of which was to influence certain areas of the political life of countries, their foreign policy, the solution of international problems, to mislead the enemy, undermine and weaken his positions, disrupt his plans, etc. One of the goals of active measures is to influence public opinion in other countries, as well as the actions of individuals, state and public organizations.
So we're talking about campaigns to change election processes since the 1980s, at least, probably way before that, probably. This is probably something that's been around since the beginning of time, right? But now what we have is technology that's helping to speed this up. Now we've got the internet. Now we have AI. Oh my God, we're headed into a freaking crazy world, right? Back then, what did they have? What did they have? They had wiring money, phone calls, maybe some VH cassettes of God knows what, of people doing God knows what. So this is back then. They already had this program going. They've had 40 years to fine tune it. That's really bad. That's really bad.
In the Soviet Union, it was precisely these activities that were carried out by Service A of the First Main Directorate of the KGB, which worked in close contact with the International Department of the Central Committee of the CPSU. Since that moment, Donald Trump has received comprehensive support from highly qualified specialists in the areas that are now being carried out before our eyes both in the United States and in the Western world. Most likely, relying on the rich experience of the employees of this secret service and long-standing contact with it, Donald Trump and his entourage created the mega movement to conduct election campaigns in 2016 and 2024, staging assassination attempts and much more with the set of shock content that the whole world has seen in recent months. I understand why Western intelligence agencies could not find an antidote to these active actions, thoroughly developed and carried out by highly professional specialists of this secret service. But let's return to Trump's curators. Leaving for a new position, Lieutenant General Ivanov transferred supervision and all management of this operation to his deputy, Major General Vadim Alexeyevich Kirpichenko, who later received the rank of Lieutenant General. From 1970 to 1974, Kirpichenko was a resident in Tunisia and Egypt. Then for 5 years, until August 1979, he headed the Illegal Intelligence Department Mess of the First Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR. He worked with Helen and Peter Kroger, Leontina and Morris Cohen. He led the storming of Armen's palace in 1979. From 1979 to 1991, Kirpichenko was the first deputy head of the First Main Directorate of the KGB of the USSR. After Kryachkov was promoted in 1988, Gorbachev demanded that young people be promoted, and 65-year-old Kirpichenko's career growth was cut short.
So what do we get from this so far? So now we're at Gorbachev, right? The Cold War ended, right? The wall came down, right? Hoorah, we won. Congratulations, United States. We won. We left Russia with a fresh democracy. We won. Now they're democratic. Let's let them figure it out on their own. And how did that work out? It didn't. There was zero support for that democracy. We took the pat on the back. We kept moving forward. And that is part of how people like Putin come to power. Because we're not out there helping other countries with their democracies. Because we chose to take the pat on the back and say the Cold War is over, we won. Right? And look what happened. The largest country in the world became a dictatorship, and now we have to deal with the problems because we didn't have soft aid out there.
Nevertheless, he continued to serve under Yeltsin and resigned only in 1997. It should be noted that it was he who headed Directorate S for 5 years, which in 1970...
The KGB never dissolved. Absolutely not. No, we dissolved. We took the pat on the back. We said, everything's fine. They're a democracy now. We don't have to worry about them. And they never stopped hating us, right? And now they've had an additional 40 years on us to figure this shit out. And we're sitting here trying to figure out what the biggest threat to America is. And apparently it's the border and transgenders as far as the President of the United States is concerned.
Took Donald Trump under its wing and began to help him in active measures. He continued to supervise this operation and secretly manage active measures already in the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. One of Trump's curators was Lazar Lazarevich Matveev, a legendary figure. He was the head of the Soviet intelligence group in East Germany.
Doesn't that guy look like the last main villain on the last Star Wars? Not the last one, the one before it. The guy was built in the tank. What's it? Snoke. Leader Snoke right there.
Represented the USSR in the Ministry of State Security of the GDR. From 1982 to 1989, He held the post of KGB USSR liaison officer for the Dresden district, and in 1982-83 was directly subordinate to Viktor Nagayev, the former head of the illegal group of the S Directorate of the KGB of the USSR. And just for information, Lazar Matveyev was Vladimir Putin's immediate superior during the Dresden period. In this message, I focused on the moment of the preparatory part of the recruitment and the beginning of active measures to work with Donald Trump. I also identified the interested parties and high-ranking officers involved in the development of the subject. All of them, one might say, are legends of the first main directorate of the KGB of the USSR. Can you imagine how important this operation was for the KGB and the leadership of the USSR, since they, together with the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia, threw their best personnel into its implementation? In my next message, I will talk about the tasks that were assigned to Donald Trump by the leaders of the KGB of the USSR, and also present publicized the very active events in which Donald Trump personally took part.
Doesn't he look like such a sleazebag? Look at that. That screams Jeffrey Epstein. Like, seriously. Like, everything about his character back then. It's just, oh my god. And the hair? Bruh. Like, get a haircut. Stop rocking it. Just, like, bick it. You know? Mr. Clean It. Fuck. Do something.
For me, as a specialist in Soviet intelligence and counterintelligence, accustomed to working according to systemic templates, it is clear why he was chosen. Trump initially perfectly matched all our criteria. From early childhood, he showed signs of criminal consciousness. With a complete lack of generally accepted moral principles and spiritual values, Trump was
with a complete lack of spiritual values. Does anybody ever remember the video he did where he was talking in front of a bunch of people, and he started quoting out of the Bible, and he was reading 2 Corinthians, and when he was reading it, instead of saying 2 Corinthians, he called it 2 Corinthians. Does anybody remember that? 2 Corinthians walk into a bar.
absolutely unprincipled and full of contempt for the sense of civic duty. It was precisely such specimens that were systematically sought out and subsequently recruited by the KGB, GRU, and the security services of the Warsaw Pact countries. To the question, what could interest young Donald Trump? I will try to answer briefly. The Bolshevik regime declared its main strategic goal to be the triumph of Red Terror throughout the world, which would be the key to the victory of the World Revolution. This was the main idea of the criminal Bolshevik convicts who created a barbaric ideology under the guise of beautiful populist slogans.
Fuck it, we're doing it. Hold on.
The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming from the nation's capital.
Hold on,
and
we're
they're a
doing
public
it. I
service
can't
of
help
your
it. You
television
gotta see
provider.
this shit. It's
C-SPAN,
so decrepit.
created by cable.
And we're going to protect Christianity. And I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct, or we're going to protect it. You know? And I asked Jerry and I asked some of the folks, because I hear this is a major theme right here, but 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17, that's the whole ball game. Where the Spirit of the Lord, right? Where the Spirit of the Lord is.
I'm fucking dead.
There is liberty. And here there is Liberty College, but Liberty University, but it is so true. You know, when you think, and that's really, is that the one? Is that the one you like? I think that's the one you like, because I loved it. And
Jesus fucking Christ, I can't even anymore. Pardon me, God. 2 Corinthians walked into a bar. Alright, continue.
Over the world, they sought out marginal and unprincipled individuals who were ready to cooperate with the GPU, NKVD, KGB, and now the FSB, despite their own acts of treason. Among historical figures, these include Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, Palmiro Togliatti and Ernst Thälmann, Dolores Ibárruri and Mao Zedong, Kim Il-sung, and many others who succumbed to the ideological handouts of the Bolsheviks under the mythological source of world revolution. All of them became traitors to their countries and their peoples. Donald Trump can be included in this list of traitors and moral freaks. In the fight to promote their ideology, the USSR Special Services used any dirty methods, political terror and murder, prostitution, drug production and distribution, human trafficking. The creation and support of terrorist organizations like the Palestine Liberation Front, the IRA in
I mean, come on. Like, if you've ever read the Bible, you know anything about Christianity, you've ever been to a Bible study, you've ever grown up in anything to do with any religion, shit, I could probably tell you some of the Quran better than this motherfucker. Right? And I've never read it. He's never even read about it. He's never opened a Bible once in his life. And people are, oh my God, Jesus sent him. Jesus sent him to save. Jesus Christ.
Ireland, ETA, and the Red Brigades in Spain are all bloody creations of the USSR. Having created a terrorist state under the leadership of yesterday's convicts, the Bolsheviks merged with the criminal underworld, establishing the Red Comintern and, having created a state system, after which they began to pursue a policy based on the creation and support of terrorist movements throughout the world. This support required colossal financial resources, and this budget was formed from the sale.
Matt Gibbs, I'm an atheist, but I can tell you he's a fake Christian. I know more atheists that do more Christian shit than Christians do. I mean, let's be real. I know more atheists with more Christian values than actual Christians that go to church. Mic drop.
Of weapons, the production and sale of drugs, human trafficking, prostitution, and the gambling business. With the rise to power of the pro-Soviet Castro regime in Cuba, the USSR began to actively interfere in the affairs of Latin American countries. Career officers of the KGB and GRU began to supervise and, together with the security services of Cuba, established direct contacts with the drug cartels of Mexico, Colombia, and a number of other countries. The goal was to, if not destroy, then undermine stability within the United States through the delivery and distribution of drugs. During my service in the GRU, I often came across reports on operations and active measures carried out jointly with Cuban comrades. In the structure of the GRU, this area was handled by the 3rd Directorate, focused on the countries of the Western Hemisphere, Great Britain, and its dominions. During my service, this directorate was headed in turn by Petriashev Kelsey Fedorovic and Sokolkin Ivan Pavlovich. It was these high-ranking officers who organized and supervised the implementation of joint operations with Cuban special services on the territory of the United States and Latin American countries. They supervised work with drug cartels that produced drugs and distributed them, primarily in the United States. On the Cuban side, Manuel Pineo Losada, a Cuban state security officer, politician, and statesman, founder of the Castro government special services, personally participated in such operations. He was an active participant in the Cuban Revolution and a member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, and headed the American department of the Central Committee of the CPC. He organized political repressions and secret special operations. But Pineo's main area of activity was foreign intelligence, exporting the revolution and Cuban expansion in Latin America. The apparatus created under his leadership was considered one of the most successful security and intelligence agencies in the world, and was compared to the East German Stasi service. Pineo's main operational partner was Marcus Wolf. I note that the CIA considered Pineo to be the Cuban equivalent of Wolf. Pineo oversaw.
So that's kind of curious how there's drug ties also to South America involved in this. I'm curious on whether or not that has anything to do with this article and Trump pardoning this man right here, Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht, and whether or not he's tied to the Trump administration. I don't know where he's from. If anybody could hit me up with that, Ross Ulbricht. But this is the guy that ran the Silk Road founder, and he was released by Trump. God knows why. The only thing I can think of is that he was on Trump's team, somehow tied to Russia or one of Trump's illegal areas of operation. Continuing.
Saw secret operations and support for pro-communist forces in Argentina, Venezuela, Peru, Colombia, and Bolivia. It was from these Latin American countries that cocaine flowed in an inexhaustible stream with the direct participation of Manuel Pineo. In 1974, Pineo became the head of the American department of the Central Committee of the CPC. In this capacity, he continued to oversee Cuban operations in Latin America, organized support for leftist, Marxist, and pro-communist movements, Grenadian, Nicaraguan, Salvadoran, Guatemalan. He was in charge of intelligence and political activities in the United States, disintegration actions in Cuban political emigrant organizations. Among Piñero's contacts were such major figures as Peruvian President Velasco Alvarado, Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos, and the rise to power of the governments of Maurice Bishop and especially Daniel Ortega were considered brilliant achievements of Piñero. Why did I pay such special attention to this topic in my post about Trump? Because the purpose of recruiting Donald Trump is inextricably linked to the production and distribution of drugs in the United States and other countries of the Western Hemisphere.
Holy fuck.
The profits from the production and distribution of drugs had to be legalized. Until the mid-70s, this was relatively easy. After all, international control over financial transactions had not yet been established, and the profits received from criminal activity were easily legalized by the Soviet Special Services.
Guys, quick trivia. What's the easiest way to wash dirty money? And I'm not encouraging it, but out of life experience, what is the easiest way for money to become clean? From financial crime money to become clean. What's the easiest way to do that? How do you do that? What type of agency do you use? What type of system do you use? What type of business do you use to launder money?
And their Cuban colleagues, after which they were directed to support terrorist revolutionary organizations and movements in Western countries. But in the late 70s,
Matt Gibbs wins.
laundering became problematic, the risks
Rick Sanchez wins. KK wins. You guys win.
increased, and it was necessary to look for a legal or at least semi-legal way to launder money received from criminal business. According to my information received from my superior, the head of the USSR GRU, Army General Pyotr Ivashutin, and the head of the 5th Directorate of Operational Intelligence, Lieutenant General Konstantin Tkachenko, our special services were intensively searching for owners.
Real estate would be one way, but obviously the casinos would be the avenue, because it's really hard to track what the earnings of an individual is. All you have to do is print them a receipt, right? And say, hey, they won this much money, the bells and whistles rang, they're paying their taxes. When they're paying their taxes, you know, guess who looks away? The government, because they got their money, right? So, and there's tons of money that flows through casinos. How many casinos did Donald Trump bankrupt?
Of companies associated with the construction.
And we pretend like it was because he was a shitty business owner. No. He knew what he was doing.
And gambling businesses, with large trading companies with chain stores. They were also looking in other areas. They were interested in firms and companies capable of officially passing huge amounts of cash through their structures. These searches were carried out in the USA by employees of the First Department of the KGB First Chief Directorate. However, according to my superiors, our employees failed to find and recruit such owners of large businesses in the USA. But the First Chief Directorate, together with the State Security Service of Czechoslovakia, was more fortunate in this direction. They managed to recruit and involve American businessman Donald Trump in their active activities. Now it is time to move on to a more detailed examination of the participation of Agent Trump in the active activities of the First Chief Directorate. If we analyze the financial ups and downs of his companies, then starting from 1976, from the moment of the beginning of recruitment, these periods will surprisingly coincide with the successes and failures of the Bolshevik system itself. Until 1987, that is, until the moment of Trump's arrival in Moscow and personal meeting with the chairman of the KGB of the USSR Viktor Chebrikov, the financial income of Donald Trump's companies fit within the limits of the financial sums received from shadow participation in the legalization of income of the KGB of the USSR and Cuban special services, which were permitted at that time. In January 1987, Donald Trump received an official invitation to visit the USSR. This was Trump's first trip to Moscow. Earlier, in late 1986, at a dinner party hosted by Leonard Lauder, who ran his mother Estée Lauder's cosmetics empire, Donald Trump met with Yuri Dubinin, then the USSR's ambassador to the UN. According to reliable sources, it was Donald Trump's wife, on the recommendation of her bosses in Prague and their handlers in Moscow, who persuaded Donald Trump to attend the event. Yuri Dubinin, like the vast majority of Soviet diplomats, was a Soviet intelligence officer working under diplomatic cover. From May 1986 to May 1990, he was the USSR's ambassador to the United States. Please note, the dates of Dubinin's transfer to the USA and the time of his work strangely coincide with the preparation for Donald Trump's arrival in Moscow and the monitoring of his actions after the meeting with KGB chairman Chebrikov.
I'll have to take your word on that, Canty. I don't know how to launder money through real estate. I'm sure if I researched it a little more, I could. But in my mind, and I don't know how to run a casino, for crying out loud. I live in a shitty area in Northern California. But it would be interesting to know how they get away with this and who polices that.
There are no coincidences among intelligence agencies. Dubinin's appointment to the post of the USSR Permanent Representative to the UN, to the Security Council for a period of 2.5 months, was a cover operation for further actions in the final stage of the operation. And judging by these actions, the leadership of the KGB of the USSR desperately needed a personal meeting.
Yeah, and not only that, like, obviously there's ways to trick the system, right? There's ways to pay off people to trick the system too. And what have we noticed? Like, what have we seen recently? Tenant Media, right? Tim Pool, Benny Johnson got paid massive amounts of money for a stupid fucking video that they posted once a week, or 8-minute video once a week, and they paid him $400,000 a month for 4 videos. Think what they would do to pay off our politicians, business owners, financial auditors. Think how much money might be involved from Russia that's already deep tied into people that take care of our daily lives that we don't even know about, because they've had 40 years to set this up.
With Trump. To officially cover his trip to the USSR in January 1987, Trump received an invitation from the State Committee for Foreign Tourism, which was one of the main mechanisms in the official espionage activities in the KGB of the USSR. By July 1987, his meeting with the chairman of the KGB of the USSR Chebrikov was fully prepared. From my own experience, I know that the preparation of such personal meetings of foreign citizens with the leadership of the USSR intelligence services took at least 6 months. But this meeting was prepared in an accelerated mode. What was the task facing the KGB leadership? With Gorbachev's rise to power in the USSR, a course was set for perestroika, including the normalization of relations with hostile Western countries. To solve such problems, it was necessary to change the face and internal appearance of the system in the eyes of potential Western partners. To achieve their goals, the Chekists always relied on bribery and recruitment of high-ranking officials, but such active measures required completely different amounts of money. This is no longer just shadow support for terrorist organizations. Here is a qualitatively different budget. Over the course of 9 years of close cooperation with Donald Trump, the leadership of the KGB of the USSR became convinced of his reliability and finally decided to entrust him with very substantial sums. This explains the fact that in the period from 1987 to the end of 1990, the financial affairs of Donald Trump's companies sharply went uphill. During this time, his capital miraculously increased by $375 million. This was a...
How does one go from being a 2-bit schmuck to that much additional income without there being criminal activity? I mean, it's very obvious. Look, you could just look at him in the face and tell he doesn't know a fucking thing that's going on. Right? There's a shell. But all of a sudden, miraculously, he's got millions more dollars.
A colossal surge, not seen before. The magic of the genius of a success.
I bet if it happened now, the same things he was doing then, it would be like a Tenant Media scandal, and he would just say, I didn't know where it was coming from.
Successful businessman dissipates if you understand how the secret springs of the special services work. And 6 official bankruptcies in the following years speak for themselves. In 1989...
Hold on. Did you guys just see that on his building?
And his companion Ivana Zelnkov saw their chance to get rid of each other and at the same time get out from under the control of their curators from Prague and Moscow. The official reason for their breakup seems naive. Professional intelligence officer Ivana Zelnichkova, with the psychology of an escort acquired during her service, simply could not get jealous of Trump having caught him with his mistress in the hotel corridor.
Oh, I missed it. There was a rainbow in his hotel. I was going to call him woke.
So this breakup was truly mutually beneficial. By the way, they divorced in March 1992, and it was in this month that the KGB and the first main directorate of the KGB of the USSR ceased to exist. It should be noted that Statny Bezpanost finally disappeared in early 1990, but the KGB controlled its agent until March 1992, monitoring the movement of funds allocated to him. However, since 1990, this grip also began to weaken, especially after the recall of Trump's curator Yuri Dubinin from Washington. This was a lucky chance. And Trump, relying on his criminal psychology, decided to quietly forget about the Lubyanka money. But it didn't help him. The decline of his financial prosperity coincided with the collapse of the USSR, and from the end of 1990 until the end of 1996, his business entered a deep crisis. But it also miraculously ended in 1997, after Donald Trump's second visit to Moscow in 1996 and his personal meeting with the leadership of the FSB of Russia, which inherited the dirt on Donald Trump. Alas, his attempt to jump...
What type of dirt do you think it was? Do you think it was like Epstein Island shit? Or did he like murder some freaking poor prostitute in a freaking motel room in the Kremlin? What do you think it was? Do you think it was... It has to be a sex scandal, right? What else could it be?
Off was not successful. In post-Soviet Russia, the new leadership of the country and the FSB have new geopolitical tasks. Other than schemes for legalizing money received from the production
Maybe he was hung like fucking Andrew Tate.
And sale of drugs and bribing officials in the United States and Western countries.
They took a picture of his mangina.
And this was already pulling Donald Trump to the electric chair. The new tasks set before Trump by the leadership of the FSB of Russia, in their nature and scale, do not compare with his previous crimes. And I will tell about Trump's active measures under the leadership of his new bosses in the final part of the message. It is time to talk about President Donald Trump and his consequences in the active measures carried out by the FSB of modern Russia. As I have already reported, in March 1992, Trump got off the hook of the KGB of the USSR, as if forgetting about the Soviet money allocated to him as a result of a personal meeting in Moscow with some KGB of the USSR Viktor Chebrikov. After consulting with my reliable specialists from the then leadership of the KGB of the USSR, I am ready to state that the money was intended to pay for services to high-ranking persons in London in US circles and for more effective implementation of active measures in the territory of the USA and other countries of the Western Hemisphere. After the collapse of the USSR and the emergence of the liquidation of the KGB of the USSR and other special services in the countries of the Eastern Agreement, Trump considered that he had been forgotten. But he was disappointed. In early November 1996, at the invitation of the first efficiency of the Prime Minister of the Moscow government, the head of the Complex of Perspective Development Vladimir Rezin, Trump came to Moscow. He arrived accompanied by representatives of the American company U.S. Tobacco, together with which it is planned to build in the elite residential room of Moscow a complex for foreign businessmen.
Here's my question. Has Donald Trump ever been invited to Moscow and not gone? Has he ever said, you know what? No, I'm busy. No, I've got something else I got to do. There's this pageant I got to put on. No, my casinos are failing. I really got to stay here and handle business. No, I've got other things. Has he ever not gone to Moscow when invited? That's my question.
In fact, it was a good bait prepared by the FSB of Russia to restore cooperation and to begin work already with the new leadership of the FSB and SVR. According to my information, control over the implementation of further cooperation with Donald Trump was assigned to the first impact of the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, Colonel General Alexei Shcherbakov. Shcherbakov Alexei Anatolievich.
Listen, Danny, we live in a cringe world. We have to face the facts. We let this happen. Maybe not me and you. Maybe not anybody in my chat. Maybe one. I don't think I have a Russian bot yet. Yeah, that'd be cool. Like we could play with him. But we let this happen, and we have to stare at this guy's past, right? Unfortunately. Otherwise, it's going to change. The history's going to change, especially if we let it. It's already changing now.
Worked in the PGU system of the KGB of the USSR since 1964. Graduated from intelligence school. Worked in Belgium, was twice experienced in business trips to India. He went from a junior operative to the first influence of the director of the SVR. During this visit, Trump met with Shcherbakov. But to create closer contact and detailed discussion of further cooperation, Trump returned to once again, in December 1996. For cover, the main goals of the visit were with the first Deputy Prime Minister of the Moscow government, Vladimir Rezin. The main topic of discussion was the project of the residential complex Trump Tower. According to my reliable source, Donald Trump and Alexei Shcherbakov spent 2 days in a separate office, specially prepared for these purposes in the building of the Moscow City Hall. At the insistence of the SVR leadership, in order to better cover up such cooperation and Trump's more frequent visits to Moscow, the mayor's office proposed several construction projects.
Guys, give some love to Angela in the chat. Angela Pod. We fundraised for her family member that's fighting on the front line with the 14th Mechanized Brigade. And she's also friends with Rowan, the man that we've been supporting. Give some love.
For example, the reconstruction of the Moscow and Russia hotels, the possibility of Trump's participation in the construction of the world's largest children's entertainment center called Miracle Park, on which Moscow Mayor Luzkov's friend, sculptor Zurab Tsereteli, worked. According to American media, Trump offered the sculptor his plan to create a huge, the size of the Statue of Liberty, monument to Christopher Columbus in Manhattan. These projects were widely covered in the Russian and American press. But not a single, even the smallest construction project involving Donald Trump's companies in Moscow was ever implemented. Simply initially, these were just well-prepared cover operations in order to initially be able to remove any suspicion from the U.S. intelligence services regarding such frequent trips and public communication. The Russian intelligence services initially tried to protect their valuable agent during such trips, adding a financial interest to him. One of the manifestations of payment for the services of such cooperation with the SVR was an event held in November 2013. Then Donald Trump organized the Miss Universe Beauty Contest in Moscow, co-owner of which he was from 1996 to 2015 together with the NBC television company. For its holding in the Moscow Crocus City Hall, Trump, according to media reports, received $14 million from the entrepreneur and owner of the Crocus Group Aras Agalarov and other investors. According to the data received from my informant, the lion's share of this money came from the SVR, and possibly from Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. I can assume that Donald Trump knew who the main source of the sum that came to him was. It was
$14 million handed to him in the 1990s by Russia. Let's not pretend like the government has changed and it was different back then. Maybe it's got a different look to it, right? A new cover. But it's been the same government, right? This has been the same empire that's invaded their neighbors and killed and murdered and raped and pillaged, right? It hasn't changed in over 100 years. Probably God knows how long, right? Right now, we know he took money, $14 million for a beauty pageant. Does any of this sound outrageous? Does anybody refute the fact that he has ties to Russia at this point?
Was decent, considering that Trump once purchased the estate in Mar-a-Lago for $5 million. Or a little.
If somebody made you $14 million, would they be your friend?
More. Trump was increasingly hooked by the Russian special services. The strategic geopolitical tasks that were set before him during the Miss Universe contest in 2013 exceeded all possible fantasies of Vladimir Putin himself. In my opinion, these $14 million were a small advance for future actions on the part of the KGB FSB agent Donald Trump. It was then that he was set with the strategic task of going into politics and trying to take the seat of the US president. Moscow constantly came to the rescue, promptly solving the financial problems of the great businessman during 6 bankruptcies of the companies belonging to him. Former employees of the AIR Directorate of the PGU KGB of the USSR surrounded him with their care and help from the moment of their cooperation back in 1978. And I am sure that some of them are still present in his entourage. I see signs of the use of patterns and skills embedded in me, among others, which were used by us, employees of the Soviet Special Services, during active measures. After all, it is impossible to hide the knowledge and skills obtained from common teachers and a special style. I will not focus on the 2016 election campaign and the obvious participation of specialists from the Layer Directorate in it, using dirty political technology methods against Hillary Clinton in the interests of Trump. However, I will dwell on the personal meeting of US President Trump with Putin during the Russia-US summit on July 16, 2018 in
Has anybody watched the summit with Putin? Has anybody actually... I'm going to be like 100% honest. I have not watched anything in the past of 2016 Trump, what he did with Putin. I've heard barely anything of it because I've been just busy. I have a busy life, right? So I haven't really researched what he did in 2016 with Putin. Yeah, I just haven't had time to look into it, but geez, look at this shit.
Helsinki. During a personal conversation with Putin in a face-to-face format, Donald Trump violated the US security law by refusing the mandatory presence of an American interpreter during the conversation in such cases. I emphasize, this is a mandatory procedure established by law. Perhaps Donald Trump had something to hide from his employee. However, it was after this personal meeting that Donald Trump came out to journalists psychologically depressed. And on the contrary, his vis-a-vis Putin demonstrated the elevated mood of a winner and master of the situation. The second point I want to focus on is the staging of an assassination attempt on US presidential candidate.
Before we get into the assassination attempt, let's get that clear. If that is true, he already violated law by not having a mandated interpreter, being that there was nobody in the room with him and Putin. Holy shit. Like, why wasn't this the biggest deal in the world back then? Like, think if Biden went into a room with Xi Jinping alone and nobody else was allowed in there, how big of a story that would be. But he can get away with the worst dictator that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And nobody says a thing about it until we watch some freaking crummy video on my YouTube channel that got sent to me by somebody from Sacramento. Has anybody else heard about that?
Trump. This spectacle took place on July 13, 2024, when a shooting occurred during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I am qualified to discuss this event from a professional point of view, since, as a young junior officer, I received specialized sniper training. Alas, I had to use these skills during short-term deployments to Afghanistan in 1984 to 86. Therefore, as a professional sniper, I could analyze this entire spectacle in detail. But for now, I will focus your attention on the personality of one young woman who was the only female guard of Donald Trump at that moment. In some of the footage of the assassination attempt, this female security guard is clearly visible. She, who is short in comparison to Trump himself, tries to cover him from the front, from the most dangerous direction of fire. Moreover, she leaves his entire head and even part of his chest open for a subsequent shot. Any professional will tell you that this is an initially incorrect distribution of roles in Trump's security system in the event of such situations. Why did this become possible? Because she was Donald Trump's only personal bodyguard, unlike all the other male guards from the government agency. And I am inclined to assume that she was aware that this assassination attempt was staged. And now directly about
that part I have a hard time with. Nobody knows how they're going to react when a bullet cracks past their head. I've been shot at twice. I've been shot at twice, and both times I froze. Both times out in the woods hunting. It wasn't like I was like some weird freaking super crazy combat. I'm not a soldier. I was never in the military. But I'm an outdoorsman. I've been shot at twice. And the first time it was on accident, but it was intentionally shot my direction. The second time was a ricochet. And I froze both times. It's not like a freaking movie. It's not like Rambo where you just blast them and, you know, you've got no problem getting shot at. I froze. I didn't know what to do the first time, right? And then the second time I did the same thing. I'm like, that was a bullet. That went past my head. I should do something, right? So you really don't know what you're going to do until it happens. I know what I do. I take bullets, apparently. So if you ever want to live, just hide behind me.
Trump's savior. This young woman is Russian. She comes from the small town of Ryazsk in the Ryazan region. In the late 2000s, it was part of the security service of Serebryansky Cement Plant LLC, which is part of the Basel Cement holding. The chairman of the supervisory board and founder of Basic Element is the Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, a billionaire, head of the merged company Rusal and EN Plus Group. In 2001, the security service of Basic Element was headed by the former head of the Counterintelligence Department and former deputy director of the FSB, Colonel General Valery Pavlovich Pochenkin. Pochenkin himself was born in Donetsk, studied at the higher KGB courses under the USSR Council of Ministers in Minsk, worked first in the KGB Directorate of the Voroshilovgrad region, and then in Kamchatka. He supervised the work of the department for exposing foreign agents. In Voroshilovgrad, Pochenkin had a daughter, Tatyana, who later wanted to get into show business, and her loving father organized this for her. Her career was on the rise, but in 1995 she tragically died in a car accident. Russians know her as Tatyana Snezhina, the author of the song Call Me With You, performed by the star of the Russian stage Alla Pugacheva. This is how intricately intertwined the events in Russia are, where the KGB leaves traces almost everywhere. But let's return to the personality of Valery Pochenkin. In 1981, he was appointed head of the 2nd KGB Directorate, Counterintelligence. From 1991, he headed the Ministry of Security Directorate for the Novosibirsk region. In 1995, he returned to Moscow to the post of head of the FSB Counterintelligence Operations Directorate. In September 1997, he was appointed
Skip who says, like, cutting your forehead in wrestling. I'm dead.
deputy director of the FSB and head of the Counterintelligence Department. On November 22, 1997,
My God, though, how accurate is that? It reminds me so much of those WWF fights back in the day with Ultimate Warrior and whatnot, where they're freaking fighting, all of a sudden blood's everywhere, and they have these cuts, and they're just super. Oh my God, that is so true.
he was included in the Interdepartmental Commission for the Protection of State Secrets. They had been closely acquainted with Oleg Deripaska since the 1990s, when Pochenkin headed the Ministry of Security Directorate for the Novosibirsk region and protected the criminal business of Deripaska and his accomplices in the Siberian region. This was a time of criminal wars for the redistribution of property in Siberia, of which Pochenkin was the shadow owner. On July 25, 1998, Yeltsin appointed Vladimir Putin as the director of the FSB, and Pochenkin became one of his most trusted persons in the FSB system. According to my information, he carried out the most important and even bloody orders of his boss. After Putin became president of Russia, their personal relationship only grew stronger. It was Pochenkin who introduced Putin to Deripaska, who eventually became Putin's personal wallet and the main custodian of most of Putin's assets. Pochenkin, on the other hand, remained in the role of the overseer, responsible for the security system of these assets. He was appointed Deputy General Director of Basic Element for Asset Protection in 2009, and in June 2018 he became General Director of the holding company Basic Element. But let's get back to the female security guard from Donald Trump's inner circle. According to the information I have, this woman worked in the security service of the Serebryansky cement plant construction in the city of Mikhailov, which, by the way, is located 99 kilometers from Ryazsk, her hometown. She was a master of...
Wait a minute. She's Russian? Holy crap. So wait. The special agent on his team is from Russia. I'm kind of mind blown by that.
Of several types of martial arts, and Pochenkin himself immediately took a liking to her. He began to entrust her with the execution of important tasks, including the murder of people. Pochenkin had influence and dirt on her, blackmailed her, and threatened to deal with her family. This influence has remained to this day. On the recommendation and protection of Pochenkin, the woman from the city of Ryazsk underwent training and special training at the Ryazan Guards Higher Airborne Command School, improving her previous skills and acquiring new ones, including special training in parachute jumping and proficiency in all types of bladed and firearms. In 2015-16, Pochenkin introduced her to Oleg Deripaska's personal security. She became the oligarch's personal bodyguard, with the same function of carrying out personal and most important assignments. Deripaska took her to the United States. And it was after the meeting between Donald Trump and Putin on July 16, 2018, in Helsinki that this lady strangely found herself in the personal security of the US president. I believe that this transfer was planned in advance and agreed upon by Pochenkin with Putin himself. Oleg Deripaska was just a transmission link in this castling. Thus, Putin and Pochenkin received the most devoted eyes and ears in close proximity to President Donald Trump. Since then, this lady has been following Trump like a faithful shadow. She was also in Mar-a-Lago, and one can only guess what top-secret documents taken out of the White House she had unhindered access to.
This is outrageous. This is outrageous. Why isn't this the biggest story in the frickin' world right now? We've got a lady that is from Russia who has ties to the FSB there while Trump almost took a bullet, had access to Mar-a-Lago where he had frickin' our secret files from the Pentagon hidden. Why is this not the biggest story in the world? Why isn't every Democratic senator, every House representative, every news agency saying, hey, we have this information? Why? I need to know that. It needs to make more sense to me. This is outrageous.
I have no doubt that she had enough time to copy and pass on to her master Pochenkin everything that interested the main character, Putin. I am sure that this theft of documents was a pre-planned and well-executed operation of the Kremlin special services. And the very participation of this strange female security guard in the active event with shooting at Trump's ears gives reason to believe that we are dealing with an unprecedented interference of a hostile state in the presidential elections in the USA. I will note that it was this story with the assassination attempt that affected Trump's rating. Consequently, and the outcome of the vote. It is difficult to believe precisely because this story is unprecedented, but it only seems incredible. The current active measures carried out by Donald Trump, Elon Musk and their other associates to destroy the US security community and army, to destroy NATO and break relations with European countries, correspond to the plans of Putin, who wants to weaken the political and military alliance in European countries and ultimately destroy both NATO and the European Union. Putin dreams of restoring the geopolitical influence of the USSR and raves about conquering all of Europe, something Joseph Stalin dreamed of but never achieved. Unfortunately, these goals can be achieved with the help of those active measures, the templates of which I have described. Deep down, I hope to reach the consciousness of European politicians and the heads of European intelligence services who are capable of preventing this madness. We still have some time. But it is catastrophically short. End of communication.
Well, that's it, guys. I'm kind of blown away that I didn't watch the ending of that. That is all new to me, that last part there. I didn't realize that the person that was there with him is from Russia, and that is concerning to say the least. That's outrageous. I'm blown away. If I would have known that, that would have been the highlight of, that would have been the name of the stream that is put off. Shout out to Canty for helping me work through that. That was my first stream. I got stuck. I didn't know what to do. He hit me up on Discord. That is crazy. Crazy. Never knew it. Never knew it. Let me see. I want to give a plug real quick. We got something going on here. I know most of you guys have already heard me rant about it and keep saying what's going on, but we got this going on here soon. Alright, I got invited to the Car for Ukraine fundraiser. I got invited to the Car for Ukraine fundraiser coming up. I'm making little tiny videos for it. It's going to be a huge fundraiser. The biggest ever. We'll go Trumpism. The biggest ever in my life, because I've only done small ones. The small ones have been extremely important, though. Great things have came from it. We got the 14th Mechanized Brigade, generator, night vision, thermal, bug spray, building supplies, power tools, behind the scenes, Paige from Kansas. Paige in Kansas helped me out with the 14th too, and got them additional supplies that they asked for just down the line. We've got, let's see, what else? Rowan got his pickup truck. Let's see if I have those pictures available that I could share. I tend to blur them out. I don't know if I can. I don't have them to share off the top of my head. So we got Rowan. Oh yeah, I gotta play this too. How much you want to bet JD Vance was the guy that had a circle protection deck for every color but white? I'm just saying. Anyways, on to the next one. Yeah. So, oh yeah, there's my background. I haven't figured out how to switch camera modes to have you guys see me. So I guess the face reveal isn't yet either. I wish I could share. I wish I could share what Rowan showed me. I can't pop it open right now. But anyways, yeah. So Rowan we got his pickup truck. We got him an EcoFlow. We got him a generator. We got him, I think that was the three main things. He bought a Ford Ranger. The Ford Ranger is, okay, here we go. I did post some of it. Here's what we got, Rowan. Here's the generator we got. I didn't even know he bought it. He bought it soon after we got him the EcoFlow, and then told me later. He did receive a concussion a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago now, or so. I don't know how he received the concussion. He could have fell out of the back of a truck. He could have got hit by or near a drone strike. But he's in one of the worst parts near Pokrovsk. Right now they're on air defense duty. What I was getting to is the Ford. Okay, here it is. The Ford Ranger pickup truck that we got him. The day after he got it, it had a Browning M2 50 caliber mounted on it. And he showed me some stuff. And they were knocking drones out of the sky, Shaheds. 200 and something drones that night came over their heads. So the truck you guys helped purchase saved lives. Here's the vehicle. Ford Ranger Danger. Ford Ranger Danger. Right? Just a cheapo little truck we take for granted here. Looks like you go cut lumber with it. Absolutely saved innocent women and children from being exploded on the front line. Let me see if I can pull up the cool video. But yeah, that's all it takes. Okay, yeah, here it is. I'm so playing
shit,
it.
but you ain't no
I'm so playing this shit. I'm not a Ford guy, but I'm a Ford guy now.
fucking Ford fucking Ranger. Ford Ranger. I know this truck. I ain't no stranger. I know that truck. That's a Ford fucking Ranger. Shit, but you ain't no fucking Ford fucking Ranger.
Yeah, Ford Ranger. Saving the day. Saving lives already. I did extra. I blurred out extra, but that's what it looked like. Nice looking little Ford Ranger. I actually saw one of my buddies repaired one with a baling wire and duct tape back in, I don't know, it was like late 90s or whatnot. But here's the Browning M2 mount. They put the 50 cal in the back of that. It shoots up and knocks bad shit out of the sky. Fucking hella cool. Yeah. Here's the original appeal video. I'm going to play it because I don't know if everybody saw it.
Вітаю. Мені кажуть Роан, я старший стрілець бригади 151. Звертаюся до вас спільнота НАФО за рекомендацією Renegade Changos. Нам для мобільності групи, виконання бойових завдань, забезпечення групи потрібен автомобіль, на який я і відкрив свій збір. Для нас автомобіль – це в першу чергу необхідність, яка може врятувати життя. Я та мої побратими мужньо тримаємо оборону в Донецькому напрямку, виконуємо бойові завдання і кожного дня захищаємо ціною свого життя, відбиваємо атаки ворога. Ми віримо в перемогу, докладаємо максимум зусиль зі своєї сторони, щоб не зламатися, щоб вистояти, щоб перемогти.
All right, that is Rowan. I'm going to throw his PayPal up in the chat. I know a lot of you already help him. He's not asking for help right now because he's stubborn. He is one of the most stubborn men I've ever talked to, but he is one of the kindest men too. But he will not tell you if he needs something unless he is desperate for it. But I know he has a generator, he has an EcoFlow, he has a truck. They just got gifted a pallet of dried fruit. He got the clothes he needs for his business. But I know he would appreciate anything extra. And I told him I'm going to be unavailable for 6 months, but I'm going to put a plug in because the Easter fundraiser hasn't started yet. I'm waiting for that. But I'm going to throw it out here just in case you guys do want to help Rowan. A little backstory to him. He lives in Western Ukraine. And he was an interior decorator before the war. He's got honey. He's got bees behind in his house. He makes his own honey, and he's got 2 kids. And this is all new to him too, just like it's new to us. Like, I know most of us have never been through this. I'm plugging it right there. War's new to him. Me and him have got into it before, with mostly because of communication breakdowns, because I'm very, very, very pushy to try to help him. And sometimes I can be overbearing with wanting to help. I've reeled it in a lot, but it means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to you guys too. And it means a lot to him. You know, he's told me straight up what it means to him and his men that people from around the world are helping him just because they care. They got a big heart, like me, like you know, like him. I mean, you know, so there's the plug on him right there. Let's see what else I can bring up. I had some other stuff I wanted to show. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I gotta go back into my stuff right here. So yeah, the Car for Ukraine fundraiser is coming up. I don't know much about it. I don't know what's going to really happen. Oh, Town Hall Eruptions. I wanted to play this for you. I put a little compilation together. It's 8 minute 29-second video, but this happened recently. Let me pull it over.
As far as cutting out those jobs, a huge percentage of those people, and I know you care about the veterans, are veterans.
Yes.
And that is a damn shame.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a damn shame.
I'm not a Democrat, but I'm worried about the veterans, man.
Well, I yielded to one of my elders, and I appreciate his comments. I think it's a great. I'm not gonna. We don't have time for everyone to stand up. I do got 2 more commitments today. Appreciate everybody making the drive out, and God bless America. Thank you.
We're gonna take pictures with you, buddy, right?
Hello, Representative Self. Thank you for being here. First,
The plug isn't allowing share. I don't know. I don't think I could make the PayPal a hot link. I think you would actually just have to type it into PayPal. And let me double check the spelling on that. Andre Cole 3. Yeah, that is the correct PayPal link for him. So you probably just have to Yeah, I don't know how to do the hyperlink to PayPal for that. I haven't messed with that yet, but I'll check it out if I can do it in the future. What do you think of this guy? I'm concerned about the veterans losing their jobs because the government agencies were cut. And the guy just says, 2 of the thoughts, 1 of the prayers. God bless America. Have a nice day. Wow. I could be a representative at that point because I'm not a smart guy. But I could probably make people more convinced that I care, other than 2 of the thoughts, 1 of the prayers. Have a good day.
I'd like to dispute House Speaker Johnson's fraudulent claim that the people here are paid protesters. People here today are real citizens who love their country, and Republican lies are compromising the democratic process and dangerously maligning everyday Americans. The lies and propaganda must stop. There is a question, yes.
Okay, what's your question?
You're not going to answer it anyways.
I'd like to ask you why you and the Republican Party have been silent about prominent Republicans throwing Nazi salutes recently.
Yeah, I got the question, Ed. The Nazi salute is despicable.
Yes, it is.
Also,
Say it publicly, online.
if we try to answer every one of everything that
You haven't answered one.
Gaslighting 101. They're not taking it. This guy gets ripped to shreds. I love it. Or would that be more of a filibuster? Because he's really not saying anything. He's just kind of wasting time. He might as well be out there reading Dr. Seuss. Just like J.D. Vance. Every time J.D. Vance talks, it sounds like he's reading Dr. Seuss, like Green Eggs and Ham.
you're right to be here to do this, you're right to do whatever you did. That's why, in one way, I celebrate what we're doing here today, because this is a freedom that very few countries in the
I love that power. Very few countries have the right to come and do this, and you guys are one of them, and I thank you for it. Next question.
So in what way? This is actually,
Answer the question.
this is why we're here to listen to you and to get your point. So I can't justify it, but I will tell you, I can't answer every solution from you.
I'm curious why nothing's spoken out about it before now, and why you're supporting our shameful abandonment of European allies in favor of the Russian influence.
I don't know if you heard that, but why are we abandoning our European allies in favor of Russian influence? Probably, I'm not a rocket scientist, but probably has something to do with that video we just watched.
Why are we in bed with Russia?
Real quick, because if you guys are so loud, we can't.
We heard her. Oh, we heard it.
Say it again. I asked why you haven't spoken out against the Nazi salutes yet, and why you're supporting our shameful abandonment of European allies in favor of the Russian influence.
Okay, to answer the question, I am the
chair of the Europe Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I have had probably 15
I do all these big things. This is what I'm in charge of, but I don't do what the fuck I'm supposed to do. Have a nice day. Thoughts and prayers.
delegations through my office since I was named the chair of this committee from Europe. And I told them all the same thing. There are several things that I've told them. First of all, they do have to step up because they are not meeting their 2% in the NATO funding. The Baltic states are doing very well, the small Baltic states. Romania, Poland are obviously all in for their 2%, even more.
Why are we aligning with Russia? That's what I want to know.
Countries are not, and they're not participating, but several others.
So he's explaining what he knows, and he's throwing in probably some factual evidence in there, but he's not answering the question because he does not align with Donald Trump. However, he's a coward. He's not coming out publicly and saying Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump isn't good. He's saying, well, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They haven't given their percentage, and these are the countries that have, but these ones haven't. He didn't even tell which ones haven't. He's just saying they haven't done it as a whole. I bet if you added the numbers as a whole, everybody's making their 2%, because some GDPs are bigger than others. You have small countries, 2% of one country could be 0.1% of another. So this is bullshit. He's just wasting everybody's time.
First of all, NATO is a consensus organization. Nothing happens in there without everybody. But they have a commitment to 2%, and they're not doing it. And for years now. So all we want them to do is to step up and actually do.
This is it. They revert back to talking points because they're unprepared for this. They don't know how to combat what Trump says because everything Trump says, it happens day to day to day. Tomorrow, the information I'm giving you right now, what we are watching, is going to be obsolete because of the radicalism that's happening in the office right now. 2 days ago, I watched a Jake Bro video, right? 2 days ago. It was a video from 3 days ago, and it was already obsolete by the time I watched it. The information is happening so rapidly, it's dumbfounding our representatives, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Do more as NATO allies, and even the people who are doing
Answer the question!
I'm going to play another video of this, and I'm going to explain what I'm talking about with the representative that's actually being showed in it from a personal experience from a friend who's advocating.
What is happening in Russia?
Right, why are we aligning with Russia? Answer the question.
We simply want them to participate more. Once they took the peace dividend after 1991, the European nations have no longer funded their military. The German military, the German.
Back in 1668, the Russian Empire spanned from this direction to another direction. And back then, actually, the common language was he's taking us on a roller coaster now.
So we side with Russia?
We need our European allies because U.S. has got to pivot to China. China is the big dragon on the horizon.
Russia! So why are we aligning with Russia?
While we're talking about our European allies, one of the things that I tell them is that the International Criminal Court is incompatible with NATO membership. Because frankly, if we send our soldiers to protect a NATO country that's a member of the ICC, so we need our European allies because we have to do.
The International Criminal Court is non-compatible with NATO. Oh my God.
We know we need them.
We know we need them.
So why are we lying with Russia?
So why are we bullying our allies?
Out! Vote you 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 out!
That's my daughter sitting next to me chanting. Love this.
Vote you out! Vote you out!
I have a feeling Keith Self is going to be by himself when his election comes.
She doesn't want to look at you. She's not going to hold the town hall. We're going to hold the town hall. We're going to hold one of our own. We're going to invite Nicole to come and look you in the eye.
Look, Nicole wouldn't even come. Wouldn't even hold a town hall. Staten Island residents. And, okay, so I have an additional video coming out soon pertaining to this, to where allegedly there was a letter that was sent out saying, don't even go. You're going to represent the people, but you're not going to listen to them.
And to talk to the people that she actually works for. Because it's not Elon Musk, it's not Trump, it's everybody who's standing here. She works for us.
Alright, let's see. I got the other video I was telling about. It was Town Hall Part 1. This was a little near and dear to the heart. Well, we'll go into here. Hold on, sir. Hold on, kind sir. We're going to go like this. We're going to go like this. We're going to go like this.
Henry said, a king...
Alright, we're going to fast forward because a lot of people have already seen that gentleman get ripped to shreds. If you hadn't, I'm sorry. But I'm going to go to the ending here. Oh, you know what? It was Town Hall Part 2. I'm wrong. No one said I'm smart. We're going to go Town Hall Part 2. Right here.
Women are dying.
Yeah, right here. Okay, Kevin Kiley. So this gentleman right here, this is not pertaining to Ukraine. Actually, Kevin Kiley, I'm going to play it here a little bit forward. Kevin Kiley is actually pro-Ukraine, or at least pretends to be really well. I have a personal friend, I'm not going to name, who advocates for Ukraine, who has been in meetings with him, who is friends with his constituents because she's a really good person and she knows her stuff. She knows how to advocate. She's American. She actually stalked me on the internet and found me, and then I linked him up with some people in the city. She linked up with Kevin. So he is pro-Ukraine, face value, but he's making some piss poor decisions as far as where we want to go in California as a state, in my opinion. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He is a Republican. So, right? But he has been pro-Ukraine. He was supportive on numerous bills that we wanted signed into legislation. Yeah, but still, he's kind of turned into a Trumpy now, so it's pretty lame. It's pretty lame when you gain relationships with people and then they just turn out to be two-faced. I'm not saying he's completely that. I think he might still have some hope for him, realistically, because after Trump did that egregious act in the Oval Office with President Zelensky, my friend was actually contacted by his cabinet and said, you need to come have a meeting with us. So things are in the works. I think behind the scenes, there's a lot of small cabinets that are freaking out and they don't support what happened, and they're trying to come up with a solution to it. I'm not trying to give hopium. That's what I know. That's factual, what I just told you. That's what's happening. What it is, I don't know. But anyways, this is how he got heckled pretty bad. Look at his facial expressions. His face, when he's talking, kind of makes me feel like he wasn't expecting this and that he might still have a soul. I don't know. We'll find out.
California's 3rd District. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. Guess there are at least a few people who still support high-speed rail in California.
For the record, that's something everybody has been asking for the longest time. Nobody I know is against that. Nobody. Everybody wants a better infrastructure. Everybody wants a high-speed rail. Everybody wants to be able to travel. I don't even know why this wouldn't be on the board other than just for budget cuts. Even though we have an expenditure in our state that we actually pay the federal government, I believe it was $63 billion last year. We paid the government. We didn't receive money. We have one of the highest surpluses. I think we made $173 billion in our GDP and around the same amount of tax dollars. So,
California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. And that is why today's action by Secretary Duffy is so important. And it's why I have introduced legislation to cut off all federal funding for high-speed rail going forward. And this is a very important point. If we cut off federal funding, we kill the project, because the Rail Authority has said time and time again that they are reliant, their funding model is reliant on further federal funding. This ill-fated project is a blight on our landscape and an embarrassment to our state. But it's more than that. It symbolizes the decline of modern California under the current leadership. It showcases political ineptitude on an epic scale. This doomed project represents the failure of planning and governance, of vision and leadership, of transparency and accountability, of competence and common sense that have turned the greatest state in the country into the most popular state to leave. It exemplifies the utter disregard for taxpayer dollars, for property rights, for economic reality, for democratic accountability that have caused our beautiful state to now lead the nation in all the wrong ways. And it captures the small-mindedness of our political leaders who think of themselves as visionaries for plowing ahead with a 20th century project that won't be finished until the 22nd century at best. Yes, the failure of high-speed rail represents all that has gone wrong in California. And
what has gone wrong in California other than political talking points and some BS in the cities? Okay, fine. The criminal laws here kind of suck. I'm in an area of that aspect where I have to see it day by day. I'm not going to say what I do, but I have to deal with shitheads every day who break the law. And seeing them walk after something bad happens sucks really bad. But guess what? It's what the people chose. So that is the only aspect of California, other than, you know, everything's super expensive here. It's all about when you buy, though. Like, I bought a house. It was really cheap when I bought it. A lot of people pay double the amount. Rents are high in the cities, yes. The roads where I live are like Russia. Like, there's mud wallows down the street. But for the most part, like, where I live, I make good money, and I don't make good money. Let's just say that. Like, I'm comfortable living here. And we have a ton of different state-ran programs to where if you are struggling, you can get aid. It's not that terrible. Crime sucks, though. I'm not going to lie. Crime sucks, the road sucks, and the drugs suck.
that is precisely why this is a very hopeful day. Once we end this project, it'll be a new beginning for California. We are turning the page in this state. A coalition for common sense is ascending. And President Trump has said there can be no golden age without the golden state. And today we're taking a major step forward towards a golden revival for all Californians. So thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for your attention to California.
We didn't need him to make this decision for us. We need that infrastructure. If he wants to make a decision, he should have sided with the people before when we passed legislation for tougher laws on criminals, tougher drug offenses, which did pass. We just had a bill passed to where if you are a third-time offender in a petty crime and you are under the influence of drugs, guess what? You're going to prison now. Before, it was a slap on the wrist. I've seen people get arrested 9-10 times, and they walk free. Now, the laws are a little stricter. If you're under the influence of drugs, you're a repeat offender, you're catching a felony now. You're going to prison. So, and the people decided on that. Gavin Newsom didn't. The people decided on that. He didn't want to pass that. So things have gotten a little better in that aspect. But he's sitting here when we have huger issues inside of our state, like the forest fire season that's coming, right? Like the crime on the streets, like the drugs on the streets, and he's talking about cutting funding on the railroad program, even though we have money that we're giving to the feds. We don't need to cut that problem if we have money we're giving to the feds. We need transportation. It makes no sense to me. Anyways, he deserved to get grilled on that. I look forward to seeing how his future interviews go with my friend. He has been supportive of Ukraine. And he did, honestly, I don't know, did you see his look? The look of shock? I want to know what you guys think's going through his head when he heard them start booing the project. Like, are you serious? Is he that detached? I don't know, but we'll see what happens with Kevin Kiley. I'm watching him closely. And at the same time, people like that, like Merck was saying, the Republicans are the ones we have to push and influence. I would feel very good if I lived in an area to where I had a Republican representative, because then I feel like my influence would be a little greater. I do have a Democrat representative that I'm still pushing because, frankly, he can do more. But if you are out there advocating, making the phone calls, here's how advocation works. Call once a week. You call your representative once a week. You give talking points. Here's what I'm upset about. This is why I'm calling you. I'm upset of the egregious actions that happened in the Oval Office with Donald Trump and President Zelensky. I'm upset that we are flirting with Russia, who has stolen 20,000 Ukrainian children and has had zero concessions on that topic. And I'm upset that we're abandoning our moral and ethical responsibility as a world leader to let them fight this war on their own, where they're fighting for their sovereignty. And at the end, you always ask, here's what I want. And the best thing you can do is give an actual bill. Like right now, there's a bill, HR, I can't remember the HR. Stand With Ukraine Act is still there. That's going to give 10 years of aid. I'm not saying, President Trump has to sign it, right? But we can at least push our politicians to push it in, right? So you pressure them. The Stand With Ukraine Act is still there. We need an act for the stolen children. If concessions are going to happen, we need the 20,000 stolen Ukrainian children to go back immediately to their land, to their families, to their relatives, to their loved ones, to the state even. But every time you call your representative, they put it in a log. They'll ask you either for your last name or your phone number, and they tally it. Okay? That tally goes into a graph. And then that graph is presented to your representative on how many times people called pertaining to these manners. And they'll give you some BS at the end. Well, so-and-so has been a strong report, blah, 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 blah. Then that's at the point where, okay, if he or she needs any additional help or information, I have people willing to support him in this process, and information he may need in our local community that will support that. Feel free to contact me anytime. I would like a follow-up by this date. So three things. You tell them what you want. You tell them what the problem is. You tell them what you want. And then you say a follow-up, give them a follow-up date. I'm expecting a phone call in 2 weeks. I'm expecting an email in 2 weeks. Those three things. What's the problem? What's the solution? And when the follow-up is. And if they don't follow up, harass them. Call them every day until they do.
Secretary, for your attention to California.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that Doge, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically,
straight back to talking points. It's the illegals' fault. Where it said, "Did you know this is the reason the veterans? It's because of illegals." Oh my God!
The VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research
No, she can't because she doesn't have it.
that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans benefits, that's very alarming to me.
Game over for her too. This shit is not going to work out the way they wanted to. People aren't dumb. They think we're dumb. They're not done. We're not dumb. And when it starts hurting them in the pocket, that's when it's really gonna. You're really gonna see a lot of change. Next, I wanted to go into this. We're gonna go. I know before you guys just freaking stop viewing me because of what I'm about to play. It's a very short clip. This is a kind of a sad clip. It's a sadder one. You guys might have saw it. I incorporated a film of some of the rallies I've been to at Sacramento on this one. And basically, you know, J.D. Vance says, when's the last time you said thank you? And I'm going to put that as a whole for him seeing Ukraine as not being thankful. Because that's kind of the attitude. When you're talking to a world leader, you're talking about their nation, right? For the most part. Unless you're talking about Donald Trump and what we agree on. So, really egregious what he did. And I just want to show a perspective from the rally of how thankful people are.
And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
I'm gonna pause it real quick. And this is not a desirable topic for a lot of people, but they need to understand this. The people in this picture are from all over the world. They're not just Ukrainian. This man right here is American. This man right here is Ukrainian. This man right here is Ukrainian. There's Armenians in this picture. And there was also Russians in this picture. This man right here is one of my friends, and he was actually poisoned by Putin with Navalny, and he bleeds blue and yellow. He helps. There's a fundraiser, Birds for Ukraine. He does where he sponsors with the pro-Ukrainian Russian population in Sacramento and provides drones to Ukraine. All right, well, that's all I really got for you guys. God, I'm glad I didn't cry on that last video. Usually it really hits me hard because it's sad. It's sad the lack of empathy that we're going through in this world where people just, our government doesn't give a shit, you know? It's sad. If anything, what we need to do, I feel like, is we got to make America human again. You know? We have to restore the morality and empathy in people. What happened? When did we become such a cold and callous country? When did we quit caring about other people? When did we care about eggs and bacon costs more than human life? And what type of leash and dog food our dogs eat? What type of clothing our dogs have? And other people are just getting exploded. Anywho, let's go out with some Nazi punching. Alright guys, that's it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Thanks for tuning in. Share it out. I had a lot of fun. I feel like that went pretty well. Thank you, Canty, for helping me not lose my brain in the get-go and figure that out. I'll talk to y'all later.